If I could go back to the very first day I started working out and give myself one piece of advice, the answer might surprise you, because it wouldn't be the perfect split or the perfect lift or the perfect time to do cardio, none of that stuff. So if you want to find out what my number one big mistake was and how to apply this to your own workouts, subscribe to the channel and stick around for more content like this. So, what's the number one mistake that I used to make and the number one piece of advice that I now give to people who are just starting to work out? It's moving with intent. This is a topic that's so important that I included it in my free book on bodyweight and calisthenics. If you want to download that book, there's a link in the description. Now in the book, it was just a small section at the end where I was giving tips and advice on how to maximize your workouts in the gym. But I actually believe in this so much that I thought it was worth dedicating an entire video to the subject. So let's get into it. What do I mean when I say move with intent? Well, there are a lot of ways not to move with intent, so let's start with a few examples. Now, the first and most common mistake that I see is just a complete lack of mental focus. Now, if you're on the treadmill and you're watching YouTube videos, that's cool. I don't really have a problem with that. But if you're doing leg extensions and you're browsing Instagram at the same time, stop. Drop the phone and focus on your leg extensions. How engaged are your quads when you're doing the movement? How does flexing or unflexing your heel affect the engagement in your quads? When you finish a set, are you fatigued? Or did you have 1 rep in the tank, or did you have 10 reps in the tank? These are all questions that you should be asking yourself and things that you should be focusing on while you're doing a movement. If you're checking Twitter while you're doing something like leg extensions or lying leg curls, you can't really answer any of these questions with accuracy. Go to YouTube, search Ronnie Coleman workout, and ask yourself if he has the mental space to allocate towards something like social media. Now, you might not have any aspirations of being a bodybuilder, but you are watching this video, which means you probably do want to be a little bit better than you were yesterday. So do yourself a favor, do your mind and body a favor, and focus on the movement that you're doing to get the most out of your workouts. Now you might think, well, when I'm in the gym and I'm on machines, I'm not on my phone, so I'm good, right? Not so fast. Because even though you're not using your phone, you might still be suffering from something that I like to call going through the motions. To illustrate this point, let's take a look at something like walking lunges. If you're going through the motions, people can probably tell you're doing walking lunges, but you're not maximizing your gains from the lunges from both a muscle activation point of view and a body control point of view. Doing an exercise is literally practice, and you're not practicing the right way. So when you're doing something like a walking lunge, don't just focus on going from point A to point B while doing the lunge. Actually focus on moving from point A to point B while targeting and activating the muscles that you're trying to target while doing those lunges. You should be both physically focused, as weird as that might sound, but also mentally focused. So now that we've covered some of the ways not to move with intent, let's get to moving with intent and some of the tips that I have to help you do this. The first tip would be to record yourself, as I did earlier when I was showing you the walking lunges. When you record yourself and you watch yourself do an exercise, you're always going to notice things that you didn't necessarily notice while you were doing it. So every once in a while, actually take out your phone in the gym and record yourself doing whatever it is that you're doing. You'll notice little things that you didn't really notice while you were doing it. Your eyes are kind of darting everywhere. You might be watching the TV while you're doing the movement, or maybe, 1 rep you're doing it really fast, and then the second rep you're kind of slow. You're just not consistent with your movement. It's worth recording yourself to see how you're doing these movements and identify any mistakes that you're making. My second tip, especially if you're more of a beginner, is to go to the machines and actually refer to the muscle diagrams that are on the machine. With a few exceptions, if you're using a machine, that's probably the muscle group that you're trying to hit. So when you use that machine, look at the diagram, see what muscle group is highlighted, and as you're doing the movement, like a shoulder press, see if you're actually feeling activation in your shoulders. See if you feel that muscle start to burn as you get to your 8th, 9th, and 10th rep. And kind of piggybacking on that point, because I didn't really do it intentionally, but if you're doing a movement like a shoulder press and you can isolate one arm, actually take your other hand, put it on your shoulder to see if you can feel that muscle being activated as you're pressing and controlling the weight on the way down. And once again, this tip kind of builds off the last tip that I gave you, but make sure that you're controlling the concentric and the eccentric. You'll kind of feel this if you're touching your muscle. Once again, doing something like a shoulder press, make sure that it's being activated on the push up, the concentric, as well as the eccentric. You want to control both parts. Don't just push up and then let the weight drop. You want to push up and then control the weight on the way down so that you're actually activating your muscles through both portions of the movement. Now, I've already addressed walking lunges and overhead presses, but to close out this video, I actually want to discuss a more difficult movement, a movement that you might not necessarily be able to do because it's more of a body weight movement. You know, if you're doing something like walking lunges or overhead presses, you can just lower the weight. But if you're trying to get your first pull-up, if you're trying to do a body weight movement like that where you're literally pulling your entire body weight up to a bar, it can be a little harder to determine how you need to move with intent. So let's go downstairs to my home gym and I'll show you some ways to think through this. So I know we just discussed that it might be easier to feel that sort of muscle activation to move with intent with a movement like an overhead press or a shoulder press where you can just lower the weight that you're lifting. But with something like a pull-up, it can be a little bit more difficult because you might not be able to do one just yet. And the way we would do that with something like a pull-up is to do what we call a negative. And what you're going to do is actually kind of cheat, but you're going to feel the level of muscle engagement that you would feel if you were able to do a pull-up and then slowly lower yourself down to feel that muscle activation through the movement. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So to do a negative, what you're going to want to do is find a box, some sort of step, and then literally jump up to the top of the pull-up bar. And then you're going to slowly lower yourself down as slowly as you can and really focus on the engagement in your back and all the muscles that are being used to hold you in that top position through to the bottom. Because as you start working towards your first pull-up, you're basically going to be doing the same thing, but just in the opposite direction. So as you're doing this negative and lowering yourself down, move with intent and really focus on the muscles that are being used. So I hope you found this information valuable and hopefully you're able to avoid some of the mistakes that I made when I first started working out. If you like this video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. And also don't forget to get your free copy of Bodyweight Basics. The link to that is in the description. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave a comment below.